Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the Thousand Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to follow. When we think of how powerful and skilled a Shinigami is, generally the first thing we look at is their Zanpakuto, their Shikai, their Bankai, and what different abilities they might have at their disposal. But of course, there's so much more to a truly talented and powerful Shinigami than just that, and a mastery of Hoho, or moving at incredibly high speeds, is one such skill that sets them apart from the rest. The greatest, most famous expression of Hoho used on the battlefield is the ability Shunpo, and it's an essential part of a Shinigami's arsenal, allowing a Shinigami to move even faster than the eye can see. No, this isn't teleportation, and no, Shinigami can't fly. Instead, it's a clever application of immensely skilled and deft footwork that enables a Shinigami to cross long distances using the fewest number of steps possible. And we've seen some incredible Shunpo feats over the years, from Shinigami covering entire cityscapes in just a few short steps, flitting about so fast as if to create clones of themselves, and vanishing from sight, even when it looked as though they'd been struck by an attack. But who are the very best, the greatest Shunpo masters known within the lore of Bleach? Whether these characters are outspeeding their enemies in battle, crossing vast distances, or even crafting their very own footwork maneuvers, several characters stand above the rest as the ultimate speedsters of the series. In today's video, I want to try and rank who I think are the 10 most skilled Shunpo masters in the manga, along with maybe one or two honourable mentions based on what we've seen them accomplish alongside the lore we have surrounding Shunpo itself. Truth be told though, this was a pretty tough list to make. After all, what really constitutes an example of Shunpo, as opposed to a character just moving incredibly fast? Or are they all one and the same? There are characters like Kenpachi, for example, who I don't think ever specifically learned the skill of Shunpo itself, which makes sense as he's just an incredibly direct fighter and can just move monstrously quickly as a result of his own personal physical strength, of his battle prowess and skill, but I don't think he's ever actually using the art of Shunpo. And as with our ranking of the Kido Masters beforehand, there are several examples of certain characters performing just the one amazing feat of Shunpo, but it's so good that I feel like it nets them a spot on the list here. Also, there's the simple fact that Shunpo is much more ubiquitous than Kido ever was. Virtually every Shinigami uses some form of Shunpo at one point or another. Anyway, let's get on with this list. Of course, as always, this is just my subjective list, so make sure to let me know down in the comments if you think I missed anyone, as well as who you think the greatest Shunpo masters are too. If you enjoyed today's video, consider hitting subscribe down below, as it really does help the channel out, and also consider checking out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games too. Maybe give your support over there if you like what you see, or if you want to help that channel grow too. It really does all make a difference. So when it comes to the honourable mentions, well, like I said earlier, virtually every Shinigami has shown some kind of proficiency with Shunpo, or Hoho in general, throughout the story, making it difficult to really nail down the best of the rest, as it were, outside of the few who have really showcased some incredible skill. Regardless, there are a couple of characters that I want to shine the spotlight on before we move on to the list proper, so let's get started. First up in our honourable mentions is the vice captain of the 2nd Division, Morechio Omaida, a character we've talked all too much about in recent weeks. But I think he deserves to be here, and really it's likely to be his only accolade he ever receives. But in all fairness, Omaida successfully dupes Baragon's Fraxio Nerge into believing he's slow before blitzing the Iran-Khan not once but twice, avoiding his attacks in a row before delivering a powerful one of his own. And then in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Omaida snatches Soifon's body from right under BG9's nose, I guess, managing to escape backwards with his injured captain before BG9 can even react. That's pretty good going, to be honest. But our second honourable mention raises the stakes considerably. I felt Omaida deserved to have a mention, but now we are really moving on to the big guns. Now, I know I said a moment ago that I don't really know if Kenpachi is even using Shunpo, which is why I can't feasibly put him on the list itself. But there's no doubt his speed is considerable, especially by the end of the series. By the end of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Kenpachi is able to run so fast that he gets out of Mayuri's rehabilitation tank way after Ikaku and Yumachika have left and have made their way to the site of Gerard's fight, and yet he still somehow gets there before them. Now, I don't think Ikaku or Yumachika are meant to be particularly fast, but even so, it is clearly framed in such a way as to highlight Kenpachi's abnormal speed. And this is heightened even more once Kenpachi activates Bankai, and this is actually one of my favourite examples of super speed in the series. We see earlier in the fight how quickly Gerard's limbs are reborn once Kenpachi slices his arm off initially, and so here we really understand how fast the captain must be moving. In Bankai, Kenpachi rips Gerard's arm clean off and then proceeds to dominate the Stern Ritter until he cuts him in two, all the while Gerard's arm is still regenerating. So this lovely little detail implies that Kenpachi defeats Gerard in the space of time it takes for his arm to be reborn, so in a matter of maybe seconds at best, but probably even faster than that. Again though, is he using Shunpo or is it just raw physical power to propel himself faster? Shunpo is honed through physical training, so there's no reason why Kenpachi couldn't use it and use it well. But it's just a case of whether he would see the value in actually trying to learn it, and that feels unlikely to me. Maybe the sound effects shown in the manga reveal one way or another, as I do believe Shunpo has its own bespoke sound effect, but I'm not entirely sure. If someone does know, I would love to know in the comments, but for now it feels right to only make him an honourable mention. The third and final honourable mention is the current Captain Commander of the Gotei 13, Kyoraku Shunsui, who has demonstrated considerable prowess with Shunpo over the course of the story, though in my opinion is also lacking just a bit when in comparison to those that actually made the list. Kyoraku crosses a vast span of the Seirei in practically a single step when preparing to face Yamamoto at the end of the Soul Society arc, a skill which Yamamoto himself recognises and compliments. Kyoraku is able to mostly keep up with Stark in their battle, though this is one area where I think his Shunpo limitations start to rear their head somewhat, as Kyoraku is clipped here and there by Stark's attacks, whereas Stark himself is able to go that entire portion of the fight completely unscathed. And when it comes to the Thousand Year Blood War arc, there's no doubt that Kyoraku's speed in his battle against Leal is particularly impressive, capable of repeatedly dodging the X-axis, which in itself is an instantaneous attack, despite being heavily wounded. The only reason Kyoraku is hit by the X-axis is because he is rendered unable to move in the wake of Leal activating his Volsten dish. Aside from that, he is, I don't think, ever actually struck, apart from that one time where he's shot in the foot because he doesn't understand how the X-axis works. He thinks the X-axis won't hit him in his shadow, but of course he's wrong. The reason Kyoraku makes the honourable mention spot and not the top 10 is that he does feel inconsistent to me. He is almost blitzed by Robert initially, but manages to adapt on the fly, dodging Robert's gunshot, only to then actually be blitzed. But the only reason that happens is because Robert teleports, essentially, after activating Grimaniel. It's a messy one, and that's why I'm happy with having him here for now. Moving on to the list proper, as I sit here looking over these names, I have to admit, again, I think this is the toughest list to put together that I've ever made. And I know I do probably say that every time, but with this one in particular, it is simply due to how nebulous the feats of Shunpo users really are. In 10th place, though, we have the former captain of the 12th Division, now turned a humble candy store owner, Kisuke Urahara, but that's not the important part. No, the bit we're focusing on today is Kisuke's history as the 3rd seat of the 2nd Division and a high-ranking and highly capable member of the Omnitz Kido. Members of the Omnitz Kido need to be incredibly skilled and at the apex of their physical prowess, something that I think often goes overlooked where Kisuke is concerned. He's so skilled in Hakuda that he was able to subdue the entire maggot's nest with just his bare hands, and that was over 100 years ago. And there's no doubt that physical prowess translates to Shunpo as well, due to Shunpo's focus on footwork and physical training. Kisuke is so fast that he's not only capable of seemingly appearing out of thin air to counter Yami's attacks on multiple occasions, but he also manages to react to a split-second attack by Wonder Weiss, something that even caught the likes of Ukitake off guard later on. And we see that Kisuke is capable of moving so quickly that not even Aizen is able to realise when he switched places with his portable Gigai. Later, Kisuke keeps up with Askin in battle and is able to match the Schutzstoffel's movements, even while being gradually poisoned by the Gift Ball Deluxe. The same Askin who, by the way, successfully defeated Yoruichi. That is an entire can of worms that we'll get into a little bit later on. So yeah, I'm pretty happy, to be honest, with having Kisuke on the list. It kind of feels like he might be underrated in this category, and I think he deserves the spot. Okay, next up in 9th place, we have a character who really only has 1 or 2 major Shunpo feats in the series, but it's a case of said instance being so impressive that this character likely has to be on here. To be honest, I may have even ranked the former Captain Commander and founder of the Gotei 13 Shigakuni Genryusai Yamamoto a little low. We know for a fact, as I've espoused numerous times on this channel, that Yamamoto is the pinnacle of what a pure Shinigami can become. He is a master of all 4 Shinigami combat arts, and yes, that includes Hoho. Yamamoto has showcased his speed a few times in the series, such as appearing behind Aion in the blink of an eye, or when he blasts across the entire Serete during the first Quincy invasion, wreathed in flame. But perhaps the best, most prominent exposure to his Shunpo prowess comes much earlier in the story. Towards the tail end of the Soul Society arc, Kyoraku and Ukitake destroy the Sokyoku in an act of rebellion, and attempt to flee from the site of the execution in order to draw Yamamoto away. By the time they arrive at their chosen spot, however, not only is Yamamoto already there, but he's sat in a meditative state as though he's been there for a while, to which Kyoraku nervously remarks on how Yamamoto arrived early. Now, to put this into perspective, considering Kyoraku and Ukitake thought they were the ones leading Yamamoto away from the Sokyoku, this means that not only did he anticipate where they were going, but he moved so quickly and so effortlessly as to pass them on their way there and have so much time left over that he sat down and readied himself for their arrival. Not only is that badass, but it is impossibly quick. Again, Yamamoto is a master of all the arts, and this is very reminiscent of the logic I had to use when placing him on the Kido list as well. He pretty much only uses Kido once in the series, but his application of Hado 96 without an incantation is one of the most impressive Kido showings we have ever seen. So this is very similar to that, and I can't help but wonder if 9 is too low. Alright, but next up we have another very similar character, another character who I feel definitely deserves to be on this list, but much like Yamamoto, there's really only one example of their Shunpo prowess to speak of, but again, it's a very impressive one. And again, I know this is a bit of a cop-out, but considering their position in the lore, who they are, what they can do, it just makes sense for them to be here. Much like Yamamoto before them, they are a master of everything Shinigami. And of course, I'm talking about the leader of the Zero Division, Ichibei Hyosube. Now, at least as far as I can recall, Ichibe's only real showcase of Shunpo comes early in his fight with Yhwach, and again it is incredibly impressive. Unleashing his Senritsu Tensho ability, Ichibei conjures a gigantic hand of reishi which then slaps Yhwach away from the royal palace, sending the Quincy King rocketing into the open sky. The crazy thing is, after Yhwach has been soaring for some time, Ichibei just casually appears beside him in the air, revealing that Senritsu Tensho sends his targets flying for 1,000 ri, which translates to 4,000 kilometers or almost 2.5 miles, before sending Yhwach flying downwards next instead. Ichibei explains that Senritsu Tensho sends them flying whether they like it or not, implying that it's impossible to escape from until you've hit the 1,000 ri mark, which we see Yhwach must have done as he's standing upright by the time Ichibei gets to him. So again, while this is really Ichibei's only significant Shunpo usage in the manga, it is undeniably pretty crazy to witness. It's a shame we don't see too much more from him in this regard, and I feel like maybe again he should be higher than this, but it's hard to really justify it based on so very little. But again, that one single instance is truly amazing. Moving on, up next we have the current captain of the 6th Division and a disciple of Yoruichi Shihoin herself, Byakuya Kuchiki. Easily one of the most proficient of the current day captains in Shunpo. Byakuya's speed and skilled footwork was something to be truly feared in the Soul Society arc, particularly his famed Senka technique, wherein he would appear directly behind his opponent and attempt to take them out in a pair of blows so rapid the opponent doesn't know what's happened. Over the course of the story, Byakuya's expression through Shunpo has only deepened. In his battle with Zomari, Byakuya proved capable of keeping up with the so-called fastest Espada, though I've personally always wondered if that title really belonged to Stark instead, and even revealed a technique taught to him by the goddess of Flash herself, Utsusemi, which tricked Zomari into thinking he'd stabbed Byakuya only for it to be a mere afterimage left behind, substituted by his Hayori. It's a move born of the Omnitsukido. As of his training in the royal palace, well, Byakuya's speed has only improved further. As of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc anime, Byakuya was capable of matching the speed of Robert Akutrone, a Sternritter whose power, despite lack of official confirmation, seems to revolve around moving at incredible speeds, the same speeds that once overwhelmed Kyoraku. So yeah, there was never any doubt in my mind that Byakuya would make this list. He's effectively Yoruichi's protege in a sense, but the real question was where he should place. It's likely to be a running theme throughout this video, but I'm not overly confident with putting him at 7th, but we'll have to do for now. And in 6th place, we've got a bit of a weird one. One that again I wasn't really sure where to rank, but it's the former captain of the 5th Division, Sosuke Aizen, who again feels like he should be on here, and has demonstrated many impressive showcases of Shunpo throughout the series, I'm just not sure where. After his true nature is revealed, Aizen instantly blitzes the likes of Ichigo, Renji, and even Hitsugaya, who was using bankai at the time and couldn't even see Aizen coming. Come the Arrancar arc, and Aizen's prowess is shown off in even greater detail. He's now capable of evading Ichigo at close range numerous times, even closing the gap between them instantaneously, getting close enough to where he could place his fingers upon the boy's chest without Ichigo even realizing. Later, when taking on the Gotei 13, Aizen narrowly avoids Kyoraku's surprise attack, and as the fight comes to a close, he successfully cuts down all 4 of his captain-level opponents at once, including the likes of Kyoraku and Soifon, who herself is renowned for speed, moving so fast that none of them even register what's going on. Though admittedly they were scrambled, thanks to Hitsugaya's reckless outburst. As the Hogyoku begins to replace Aizen's soul and he's entombed in his chrysalis state, he's able to move so fast as to be unnoticed by Kisuke, Isshin, and Ichigo, though again, there's a caveat to this. It's also likely that at least Kisuke and Isshin didn't notice his movements because they can't feel his Reiatsu, whereas on the other hand, Ichigo can feel Aizen's presence and was still shocked by his sudden appearance. and once Yoruichi has arrived, Aizen moves fast enough to appear directly beside her, catching her off guard. Though someone as adept at Shunpo as Yoruichi is still able to counter his attack in time, and even claims to have been able to dodge it with no issue. By the time we reach the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Aizen is fast enough to keep up the Soul King Yuha arc as well. So, there's a lot going on here where Aizen is concerned, but I definitely think he deserves a spot on the list. For now, just missing out on the top 5, but again, I'm not confident in that. But kicking off the top 5, we have the current captain of the 2nd Division, and the most adept at Shunpo of the current day captains, Soifon. Also the current leader of the Omnitz Kido. An indisputable master of Shunpo, Soifon is blisteringly fast, able to mostly keep up with Yoruichi herself during their battle. She's able to flit about so quickly as to barely be seen, and when she delivers her fatal strike against Gio Vega, well, he has absolutely no idea what just hit him, and didn't even feel her second attack. Soifon weirdly doesn't really get any opportunity to showcase her speed in her battle with Barragan, and in fact, if anything, it's rendered useless by his Respirar, but against BG9, the captain is able to move so fast that she not only breaks the Sternritter's minigun in two, but also successfully catches all of the bullets he's already fired at Omaida, dropping them at her feet. Despite this, BG9 doesn't even notice Soifon's presence until she's already moved away from him and starts speaking. Once she's then seriously wounded the Sternritter, Soifon is then able to avoid his tendril, which he fires at her almost like a gun. Against Aizen, Soifon reveals that she's able to move fast enough with Shunpo to create a small army of identical clones of herself, all of which then lunge at him, seemingly in accordance with the main body. It's difficult to know how long these clones last for, since it is possible Soifon simply disengages them upon landing a successful hit, but either way, it's incredibly impressive. Zamari, again the so-called fastest Espada, was only capable of creating 5 clones at any one time, thanks to his bespoke ability Gemelos Sonido. So yeah, there's absolutely no doubting Soifon's capability as one of the fastest and most proficient Shunpo users in the series, and like I said, I handily have her as the most skilled of the current day Gotei 13. But there are 4 other characters who I think are even more adept than she, so let's take a look. And in 4th place, we've got another member of the Zero Division. I mean, it makes sense, right? These guys are supposed to be the absolute cream of the crop, and nowhere was that made clearer than when Nimaya Oetsu utterly blitzed Yuha-Bark's Schutzstoffel, taking all 4 of them down before many of them could even really react. Now sure, there are some caveats to address here. This was technically the weakest version of these guys, as it was only the first time they died, which sounds insane to say, but even so, this is an incredible feat. Oetsu practically teleports in front of Gerard before killing him in a single swing, before then darting over to Lille and doing the same thing. By the time we get to the final 2 members, Oetsu launches his Zanpakuto at Pernida before essentially appearing out of thin air to retrieve his blade, kicking off of the Quincy and then twisting round to strike Askin. Now Askin actually manages to dodge the killing blow itself, something that again we'll discuss in a moment, as Askin is going to become a surprisingly important character in this discussion, but he's then taken out by Oetsu anyway. There's no doubt that Oetsu's lightning-fast manhandling of the Schutzstoffel was designed to show us just how impossibly capable these guys really were. The Zero Division, I mean. Knowing what we do now of the Schutzstoffel themselves as well only makes this all the crazier, even if again they were technically at their weakest at the time. Later in the same battle, once Askin gets back up and starts fighting Oetsu again, the battle ends with Oetsu blitzing the Sternritter yet again, essentially appearing behind him with his blade outstretched, having cut Askin down before the Sternritter really knows what's hit him, and so seemingly moving even faster this time than he did previously. In the anime's extension of this battle, Oetsu proves capable of avoiding the majority of Lille's the X-axis shots, even after Leal has been resurrected and powered up. So yeah, I think this warrants a very high placement for Oetsu. Now, whether or not he deserves to be placed higher than Soifon, I'm not entirely sure, but for now I'm placing the second member of the Zero Division to find their way onto the list at 4th. But now we've reached the top 3. And in 3rd place, we have the former captain of the 2nd Division and the Shinigami known as the Goddess of Flash, Yoruichi Shihoin. Wait, I know what you're thinking. How can this be? Surely Yoruichi should be ranked number 1, right? Well, going into this video, I thought so too. But there's quite a bit going on here, and frankly, the characters taking the top 2 spots are... well, they're kind of crazy, truth be told. But of course, Yoruichi is absolutely no slouch, and has earned her nickname for a reason. She crosses a huge swath of the Serete in practically no time at all to reach Soifon on the Sokyoku Hill, and she's capable of moving at such a rapid speed as to appear in multiple places at once, using said speed to wipe out an entire squad of the Omnitz Kido, shocking Soifon in the process. Speaking of Soifon, although she manages to keep up with Yoruichi during their battle, she's unable to follow through and is ultimately defeated. Yoruichi is capable of outrunning Byakuya with relative ease, even while carrying an unconscious Ichigo on her back, even tricking the captain into thinking that he'd landed a critical strike, only for it to be a mere afterimage. The same Utsusemi technique that Byakuya would later use against Sumari. In Turn Back the Pendulum, we see that Yoruichi is so fast and so skilled with Hakudo, which does play a big part in this moment to be fair, that she's able to get in and out of the most heavily guarded area of the Serete, the Central 46, without anyone being able to stop her. Yoruichi is fast enough to react to Aizen's movements, even after he's entered his chrysalis form, a form where she can no longer sense his Reiatsu, meaning she's working at a considerable disadvantage, and yet is clearly at the same level, or even faster than him, when it comes to her raw physical footwork and prowess. Unfortunately though, things start to get a little weird for Yoruichi when it comes to the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and this is where our discussion surrounding Askin as a surprise power player comes into play. I'd never had Askin down as being the speedster of the Quincy, but it kind of seems like that's where things are going, and perhaps where they'd already been going, even in the manga. As noted, Askin is the only member of the Schutzstaffel to avoid Oetsu's initial killing strike, but I honestly originally put that down to the fact that he was attacked last, and so had a chance to kind of figure out and gauge the trajectory of the slashes. But we see in his battle with Yoruichi that he somehow manages to land a gift ball on her when she's at full power, completely poisoning and incapacitating the Goddess of Flash. And honestly, this is really weird to me, and unfortunately happens off-screen, so we don't know how he achieved it. But Askin himself doubles down on it later on, noting that he hit Yoruichi with a poison ball when she was at 100%, meaning there's no way she can defeat him now she's weakened. And it's honestly kind of crazy to me to try and pass the idea that Yoruichi might actually just be slower than Askin. And it kind of feels like that is what's happening here. Like that's the narrative both the anime and the manga are trying to push. With the anime only exacerbating this by having new scenes where Askin even comments on how fast he really is. And of course I know he's a member of the Schutzstaffel, these guys are essentially broken beyond belief, but this is Yoruichi we're talking about here. Unless Yoruichi was somehow tricked into striking the gift ball like Grimjo, but again I'd like to think that she wouldn't fall for that. The truth is that no matter how Askin managed to score the hit that brought her down, none of the answers make her look good. There's no doubt that once Yoruichi enters her Kokubyo Senbi form, that she does then begin to outspeed Askin, appearing rapidly in front of him on numerous occasions to land several big hits while he attempts to flee, but it's a weird situation all the same. So again, it's obvious that Yoruichi is one of the fastest characters in the series, and likely the regular Shinigami with the most skill in Shunpo. That should give you some clue as to who is holding the second and first spots, but This Askin situation is a strange one, and it's only heightened by our number 2 pick. In second place, we have yet another member of the Zero Division, being Kirinji Tenjiro, also known as Lightning Fast Tenjiro, due to his incredible, perhaps unparalleled skill with Shunpo. Barely a chapter after his introduction, Tenjiro demonstrates his footwork by blitzing Soifon, clearly a deliberate character choice on Kubo's part, appearing behind the captain in a flash and even pinning her arm to her back, without Soifon having a clue when he moved. Now, is this a totally fair moment to look at? In a sense, not really, because Soifon had literally no reason whatsoever to even suspect an attack was coming, but then again, the leader of the Omnitsukido in particular is meant to be always on the alert. But of course, it's the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime that really highlights Tenjiro's immense speed. In his new battle with Hashwolf, Tenjiro completely overwhelms the Sternritter Grand Master, zipping about him all the while striking with Kinpika, and when it comes down to their final strike, Tenjiro outpaces Hashwolf and cuts him down without breaking a sweat. And then we get to Askin once again. When the Schutzstaffel are all revived by Yhwach's Auswählen, and the next phase of the battle begins, Tenjiro is pitted against Askin, who, if you recall, was just cut down by an incredibly fast Oetsu. Well, not only is Askin back, but he's now back and better than ever. He now has access to his full, heightened power thanks to the Auswählen, meaning this version of Askin is the same one that will later fight and defeat Yoruichi. Possibly even better, because he's activated a partial version of his Volstendish. Although Askin does later outmaneuver Tenjiro thanks to lacing the Blood Hell Pond water with the death dealing, poisoning Tenjiro without the Shinigami realizing in terms of their raw physicality and base stats, Tenjiro is faster than Askin and even notes as such, actively catching up to the Sternritter while the latter tries to run away. Kubo himself would later reveal even more about Tenjiro's capabilities thanks to Club Outside, where he not only detailed the 3 stages to using Shunpo: Joritsu, assuming the initial stance, Bakyaku, moving the leg into position, and then Shunpo itself, where it all comes together, but revealed that Tenjiro is immensely skilled in that second stage, Bakyaku, allowing him to achieve impossible speeds. So I'm pretty happy with having Tenjiro here on the list, and who knows, in regards to raw Shunpo capability, maybe he's actually number 1. But there is one other character who I think tops him on this list, and I'll be interested to see if you agree, as they surprised me as well when I was researching this video. But the number 1 spot goes to, well, it's Ichigo. Speed has always been Ichigo's thing, really ever since the Soul Society arc, when he instantly took out 3 vice-captains before anyone could do anything about it, and then later used Tensor Zangetsu to completely outmaneuver Byakuya, who himself, as we've noted already, is incredibly fast. Ichigo is so fast that he's capable of countering the individual petals of Byakuya's bankai, conjuring rapid afterimages, and yes, even uses Shunpo to such a degree that he's able to catch Byakuya off guard not once, but twice. While Ichigo's speed is emphasised in the Soul Society arc, there's no denying it does take something of a back seat in the Arrancar arc, though it's still impressive nonetheless, appearing out of nowhere to protect Orihime from Yami's attack, and then moving so fast that both Yami and Ulquiorra were shocked when he cuts the Espada's arm clean off. Much later in the same arc, a released Yami launches Rukia to the ground with such power that she's moving so quickly, too quickly, to right her position, only for Ichigo to appear in the blink of an eye and rescue her before she hits the ground. Towards the end of the arc, once he's unlocked a new power, as a result of his Dangai training, Ichigo blitzes even the transcended Aizen, appearing out of nowhere and grabbing his face before launching him away from the battlefield at an immense speed. However, it's really once we reach the 1000 Year Blood War arc that Ichigo's speed and his skill with Shunpo becomes a dominant factor for him again, and reaches heights that are frankly unfathomable. taking him way beyond the majority of what we see from the series. Having trained in the royal palace, Ichigo prepares to head to the Serete, wherein Tenjiro tells him it'll take him a week using normal Shunpo. But Ichigo believes that he can make it in half a day if he moves at his top speed, which he does, and he manages it. Remember that Shinigami cannot fly, so Ichigo is rocketing at an unbelievable speed thanks to his incredible Shunpo ability, shaving an absurd amount of time off his journey. Hell, maybe he's just falling really fast. But he's moving so fast that he can't stop himself when he reaches the ground and slams into a tower. But then he appears directly behind the Bambis, shocking all four of them, as they had no idea where he was. And in the anime, the sheer air pressure of his movement is enough to then send the Quincy's flying. Speaking of the anime, Ichigo is later able to keep up with and even outspeed the likes of Yhwach himself during their second encounter. And much later, once Yhwach has absorbed the Soul King and effectively become God, Ichigo releases his Horn of Salvation transformation, and this is where things get pretty wild, if they weren't already. Orihime is shocked when Ichigo essentially teleports in front of her Shunshin Rika, and he then moves so quickly as to be upon Yhwach, Soul King Yhwach, before the Quincy King has even finished drawing his sword. Yhwach is drawing his blade, and Ichigo is upon him so quickly that he literally grabs Yhwach's hand to push the blade back down again. It's honestly really cool to see that speed and Shunpo has once again become a truly vital part of Ichigo's arsenal, and it allows him to do amazing things like this. In my opinion, whether he knows it or not, Ichigo is the greatest Shunpo master in Bleach, particularly by the end of the series, and he's barely even trained in it. But that's Ichigo for you. His impossible latent power, his unending wellspring of ability, makes feats like these, well, possible. Alright, but that's it for today's video. That's it for my list of the top 10 greatest Shunpo masters in Bleach. I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty happy to see the back of this one. It was a bit of a headache trying to come up with this list, and as I said, I'm still not completely happy with it, to be totally honest. I'd love to see your thoughts down below. Let me know your personal lists. I'd love to see where we agree, where you think I'm off base. It'll help me inform my list better for the future as well. I'm not sure about the placements of Ichibei, of Oetsu, of Yamamoto, of Soifon. A lot of this I think is pretty weird, to be totally honest, but that's what makes it really fun at the end of the day. So do please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Alright everyone, but as always, I really do hope you enjoyed today's video. Consider giving us a like and hitting subscribe if you enjoyed it. It really does help the channel, especially when we're kind of getting fewer views than ever because of the way YouTube is just being really annoying at the moment. So any support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to help support me even further, going over to Patreon, supporting over there with as little as $1 a month is making a massive difference, to be totally honest. You get your name in the credits just like this, and at $2 a month, you get every video totally free of YouTube ads. It's bespoke upload for Patreon users, so that would be really appreciated. But of course, if not, just having you here, that does make all the difference in the world. So thank you all so very much. Alright guys, until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.